Ethan Wallace was 24 years old when he first saw Elena Harper. It was a warm summer evening in 2002, and the town of Crescentvale, Oregon, was alive with the hum of the annual county fair. Ethan, a young trucker just starting out, had gone with his best friend to watch the fireworks and indulge in fried food. Elena, a waitress at the time, was working the funnel cake stand. She caught his eye immediately. Her auburn hair reflected the soft glow of the lights, and her easy smile seemed to brighten the already festive air. She noticed Ethan too, his rugged charm, warm brown eyes, and shy demeanor standing out among the rowdy crowd. Their first conversation was simple, punctuated by laughter and awkward pauses. Ethan ordered a funnel cake, then promptly spilled powdered sugar down his shirt. Elena teased him, handing him a napkin with a grin that made his chest tighten. By the end of the night, Ethan had worked up the courage to ask for her number. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Ethan's job as a truck driver kept him on the road for days, sometimes weeks at a time, but he always found his way back to Elena. She became his anchor, the person he called from lonely motels and truck stops. They married 2 years later in a small ceremony at her parents' backyard, surrounded by family and friends. Ethan promised Elena the world, and while their means were modest, they dreamed big. He saved every spare dollar to buy a house in Crescentvale, a place where they could build their future. In 2005, they moved into their craftsman-style home at 1289 Sycamore Lane. It was small but cozy, with hardwood floors and a backyard perfect for summer barbecues. Elena painted the walls in soft pastels, while Ethan built furniture in his spare time. The arrival of their son Theo in 2008 only deepened their bond. Ethan doted on him, teaching him how to fish and cheering him on at Little League games. Elena, now a stay-at-home mom, poured her energy into raising Theo and creating a warm, loving home. But as the years passed, cracks began to form in their once solid foundation. Ethan's trucking career demanded long hours and extended absences, and leaving Elena to manage the household alone. At first, she coped well, filling her days with playdates, community events, and hobbies. But as Theo grew older and more independent, the silence in the house became deafening. In 2015, Elena discovered the world of wellness coaching. She began selling herbal supplements and fitness plans online, building a small but loyal client base. The work reignited a spark in her, giving her a purpose beyond motherhood. Ethan was supportive but distant, his own exhaustion leaving little room for deep conversations. By 2016, the distance between them was palpable. Elena spent more time on her phone, connecting with clients and attending seminars, while Ethan retreated into the familiarity of his truck and the open road. Theo, now 12, sensed the tension but kept to himself, burying his head in video games and schoolwork. Ethan first met Andrew Miller at a neighborhood barbecue in June 2016. Andrew, a tech consultant in his mid-30s, had recently moved into Crescentvale and quickly charmed everyone with his wit and confidence. Elena seemed especially taken with him. Ethan noticed how she laughed at Andrew's jokes, her eyes lighting up in a way he hadn't seen in years. At the time, he dismissed it as harmless, just friendly banter at a social gathering. But over the weeks that followed, Andrew's presence became more noticeable. He joined local events, offering tech advice and networking tips. He even showed interest in Elena's wellness business, suggesting ways to expand her reach. Ethan didn't think much of it until one evening in late July. He returned home from a 2-week trip to find Elena more distant than ever. Her phone buzzed incessantly, and she quickly silenced it whenever he entered the room. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan checked the security cameras he had installed earlier that year after a rash of neighborhood burglaries. The footage revealed something that made his stomach churn: Andrew visiting their home during Ethan's absence. Ethan spent hours reviewing the footage, each frame a knife twisting deeper into his heart. Andrew's silver Mercedes appeared multiple times over the past month, always parked discreetly at the end of the street. Elena greeted him each time with a warmth Ethan hadn't seen in years. They embraced, their body language intimate and familiar. On one occasion, the footage showed them sitting on the couch, laughing and sharing a glass of wine. When Andrew leaned in to kiss her, Elena didn't pull away. The betrayal was undeniable. Ethan felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and humiliation. He couldn't understand how the woman he had loved for over a decade could betray him so easily. For weeks, Ethan kept his discovery to himself. He continued to review the footage obsessively, each new interaction between Alina and Andrew feeding his anger. He noticed how she dressed differently on the days Andrew visited, her outfits more polished and alluring. Unable to confront her directly, Ethan began planning his response. His mind turned dark, the betrayal consuming every waking thought. When he was assigned a 4-day route to Seattle, he saw it as an opportunity. He told Elena about the trip as he always did, her response as indifferent as ever. But instead of heading north, Ethan parked his truck in an abandoned lot on the outskirts of town. From his makeshift surveillance hub, he monitored the security feeds in real time. The day Ethan had been waiting for arrived on a warm August evening. Andrew's Mercedes appeared once more, pulling into the neighborhood like clockwork. Alina greeted him at the door, her black dress clinging to her figure. She took his wrist in both hands for entry. Ethan watched from his truck, his heart pounding with rage. He started the engine, the familiar rumble now carrying a sinister weight. Driving through Crescent Vale, Ethan felt a grim sense of clarity. His mind replayed every moment of betrayal, every lie, every embrace. When he turned onto Sycamore Lane, his headlights illuminated the house. Through the living room window, he saw Alina and Andrew on the couch, their laughter audible even from the street. Ethan pressed the accelerator. The truck roared forward, its massive frame barreling toward the house. At 9:47 p.m., the collision shattered the quiet of the neighborhood. The truck plowed through the front wall, obliterating the living room and everything within it. The sound of the crash echoed through Sycamore Lane, drawing neighbors from their homes. Some stood frozen in their driveways, their expressions a mix of shock and confusion. Others rushed toward the scene, their phones already dialing 911. The once cozy craftsman-style house was unrecognizable. The truck's massive grille had torn through the living room, shattering the front wall and collapsing part of the second floor. Furniture, shattered glass, and splintered wood were scattered across the yard, lit eerily by the truck's still-burning headlights. Inside, the scene was even more catastrophic. The couch, once a symbol of family comfort, was now buried under debris. Alina and Andrew lay motionless, their bodies pinned beneath what remained of the roof. Ethan stepped out of the truck, his boots crunching on broken glass. His face was eerily calm, his eyes scanning the wreckage with a detached sense of finality. He walked to the curb and sat down, placing his hands on his knees as if waiting for the inevitable. The first responders arrived within minutes. Officer Ryan Carter, a veteran with the Crescent Vale Police Department, was the first to approach Ethan. "Sir, are you injured?" Carter asked, his flashlight illuminating Ethan's face. Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm fine." His tone was steady, devoid of panic or remorse. When asked for identification, he handed over his commercial driver's license without hesitation. Meanwhile, paramedics worked frantically to extract Elena and Andrew from the wreckage. Both were pronounced dead at the scene, their injuries too severe to allow for any chance of survival. The neighbors watched in stunned silence as Ethan was handcuffed and led to a waiting police car. Whispers rippled through the crowd, speculation spreading like wildfire. As Ethan sat in the holding cell that night, memories of his life with Elena flooded his mind. He thought of their first date at the county fair, the way she had laughed when he spilled powdered sugar on himself. He remembered the day they moved into the house on Sycamore Lane, how they had painted the walls together, their hands smudged with streaks of pale blue and green. He thought of Theo, his wide-eyed wonder during their fishing trips, and the pride in his voice when he showed off a perfect report card. And then, the memories turned darker. He remembered the nights he spent on the road, lonely and exhausted, wondering if his sacrifices were enough. He remembered the subtle shifts in Elena's behavior, the way she pulled away from his touch, her laughter becoming rarer with each passing year. What haunted him most were the moments he didn't notice, when her smile began to fade, when her words became clipped, when her heart started drifting away. Ethan's trial began 6 months later, drawing national media attention. The courtroom was packed with journalists, curious onlookers, and the families of the victims. The prosecution painted Ethan as a man consumed by jealousy and rage, meticulously planning the act of murder. They presented the surveillance footage as evidence, showing his obsessive monitoring of Elena and Andrew's interactions. The defense argued that Ethan had been pushed to the brink by betrayal and emotional torment. They brought in a psychologist who testified about the effects of prolonged isolation and the psychological toll of infidelity. Elena's closest friends testified about her growing unhappiness in the marriage, describing her as a woman yearning for connection. They painted Andrew as a charismatic outsider who had taken advantage of her vulnerability. But the most damning testimony came from Theo. Speaking via video link from his grandparents' home, the 12-year-old described finding hidden cameras in their house and overhearing Ethan's angry mutterings about Elena's betrayal. "I just wanted them to be happy again," Theo said, his voice trembling. "I didn't know it would end like this." After 8 days of testimony and 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The judge's voice was steady as she pronounced Ethan's sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Ethan showed no visible reaction, his face a mask of stoic resignation. Elena's family wept quietly in the courtroom, their grief mingled with the bitter knowledge of her betrayal. Andrew's parents sat in stunned silence, their son's charm and ambition reduced to a footnote in a tragic story. The house on Sycamore Lane was condemned and later demolished. For months, the empty lot stood as a grim reminder of what had transpired. Neighbors left flowers and notes along the chain-link fence, transforming it into an unofficial memorial. Theo struggled to adjust to life with his grandparents. The boy who once radiated joy and curiosity now carried the weight of his parents' choices. He kept a box of family photos under his bed, but he rarely looked at them. Letters from Ethan began arriving monthly from prison, each one filled with memories, regrets, and words of love. "I failed you, Theo," one letter read. "I thought I was protecting our family, but all I did was destroy it. I hope one day you can forgive me." Theo never replied, but he kept the letters, their presence both a comfort and a burden. In the years that followed, Crescent Vale tried to move on, but the story lingered in whispers and headlines. Ethan's name became synonymous with tragedy, a cautionary tale of love turned to obsession. From his prison cell, Ethan spent his days reflecting on the life he had built and destroyed. The memories of Elena and Theo haunted him, their faces a constant reminder of what he had lost. Yet even in the darkest moments, a flicker of hope remained. A hope that someday Theo might understand the man Ethan had been and the choices he had made. If you enjoyed this dive into the mystery, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime OCS for more chilling stories from history's darkest corners. Drop your thoughts, theories, and questions in the comments below. Let's untangle the truth together. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.